Hello everyone, welcome to Analog IAS Current Affair Analysis for 23rd of March 2021, and in this particular video we'll be discussing this couple of issues. This article titled An Unconscionable Act is taken from the Hindu, and this is with respect to the conflict in Myanmar, the coup that was followed by the refugee crisis. After this military coup a few weeks ago, where the military of Myanmar has dismantled the government and taken the entire control over the state, a lot of people feared that they might be persecuted, and at least 1,000 people from the adjoining Chin state of Myanmar crossed the border and are currently in Mizoram. Now, this is a problematic issue for Indians as well, because time and again we have seen that this refugee influx into the bordering states has altered the demography in a long term. To have a understanding, if you take the case of the parallels that you see in the case of Assam, during the 1971 war, a lot of people crossed the border and entered into India. Today there is a large debate about these particular section of people who came into the country after 1971, the Assam NRC, and the missing people from this NRC activity has caused a huge problem for the entire administrative structure in Assam. But the present case is a very different one. This is because the people in Mizoram, or we can call them Mizos, are ethnically related to the people who reside in this Chin state. Now, because of this emotional connect with the people across the border, when they sought refugee in the state, Mizoram people welcomed them because they felt that they were one amongst them. So when the people entered into Mizoram, a lot of Mizos were actually welcoming the people. But time and again, with the experience that India had with refugee crisis over a period of time, we have realized that we cannot allow them to stay permanently in this. So they were actually detained in the region because there can also be an internal security challenge. So this internal security challenge should be handled in a legal manner. Now, in order to understand the legal status of refugees, can we call them illegal migrants if the government does not actually recognize them as refugees? Yes. But if you have to understand the problem of refugees on a international level, you have to know something about the 1951 convention which was signed for refugees. So this is also called the UN Refugee Convention. So according to this convention, all the people who were displaced from their residences before this cutoff date in 1951 were to be treated as refugees across the world. However, India did not sign that, or the 1967 protocol, which applied to the people who became refugees after this 1951 convention was signed. So India is neither a part of this 1951 convention or the 1967 protocol, which also talks about these refugees. The reason is very simple. If India signs this convention, it becomes legally binding. Now, with the kind of porous borders we have across different countries, which can potentially create internal security challenges, India felt that we have to go on a case-to-case basis rather than a legally binding international agreement. Therefore, India did not sign this convention. But in the present case, India is facing a ethical dilemma. On one hand, the people who are seeking refugee from the Chin state into Mizoram are citing that they might face persecution. Now, this article points out to the legal flaw or even the ethical dilemma that we are facing. To say that we are not a part of this UN Refugee Convention and therefore we shall not accept these people is a problematic one according to the writer. And it is in this context you have to understand something called the principle of non-refoulement. This article writer suggests that this principle of non-refoulement is applicable to even those states which are not the signatory to the 1951 convention. Therefore, this principle is applicable even to India. Now, what does this principle say? According to UN norms, if any refugee says that there is a danger or a threat for their very existence and seek refuge in a country, no country shall permanently turn their back or deny entry for these refugees. This is the case even in the Syrian crisis as well. A lot of countries had to accommodate the refugees because of this principle of non refoulement. Now, if we are actually denying the refugee status to these immigrants who are coming into Mizoram because of the fear of persecution from the Myanmar army, the article writer believes that we are violating international norms, that is the principle of non refoulement. We are actually turning away the people who are facing a crisis. That is the first argument. Now, the second argument is a moral one. When India wants to set an example for human rights across international bodies and international fora like the Office of High Commissioner for Human Rights, we will have to set examples with our actions. So, this is an opportunity to set one such example. And not only that, we have to understand that in Mizoram, there is a demand and concern which was raised by a lot of people representing the state. So, this concern should be addressed very soon, otherwise, it will lead to another internal security crisis where Northeast has been very volatile for a very long time. So, this is the gist of this article. A very important theme here is understanding the status of refugees from various countries, not just Myanmar. We also had immigrants or refugees coming in from Bangladesh. We have had a recent debate about the Citizenship Amendment Act, wherein the refugees from various different countries, the people who are facing the persecution because of the majoritarian attitude of the respective countries, has been a point of discussion for the last couple of years. Therefore, this issue becomes very important, and all the principles with respect to this 1951 convention and the 1967 protocol, and whether the fact that India is a signatory of this convention and protocol is very important for prelims perspective. The next article, titled A Tale of Two Frontiers, is trying to explain the difference between the kind of relations that we have had with our eastern neighbor, that is Bangladesh, and the kind of inconsistent diplomatic efforts that have been the hallmark of our relationship with our western neighbor, that is Pakistan. So, this is the framework of this article. Now, the context of this article is the fact that our Prime Minister is visiting Bangladesh to mark the 50th year of India-Bangladesh relations and also the 50th anniversary of declaration of independence of Bangladesh from Pakistan. On that note, let us try to understand, for starters, our relationship with Bangladesh. So, if we have to understand the relation that we have with Bangladesh under different fronts, we have to firstly remember that India was one of the first countries to recognize Bangladesh and establish any sort of diplomatic relation immediately after independence in 1971. Therefore, India has always been one of the most important partner for Bangladesh. On that front, the first area we have to focus upon is defense cooperation, because that is how our relationship with Bangladesh has begun. So, Bangladesh has been in trouble when it was fighting its war with Pakistan to attain independence. And in this war, India has actually helped the Bangladeshis by supporting them. And that is how the foundation for defense cooperation actually began. So, over the period of the last few years, there were a lot of joint exercises of army, navy, which took place between two countries. For example, you can take the case of army exercises like in the case of Sampriti exercise. So, Sampriti is the exercise of armies of the respective sides. And if you take the case of navy, it is called Milan. The name of the exercise is Milan exercise. So, there are a lot of issues that happened over a period of time with respect to our border management, because when you have a border which is porous and as long as 496 kilometers, you have to remember that India shares the longest boundary with Bangladesh. So there are bound to be having some sort of issue or the other. But we have settled that as well in 2015, when Prime Minister Modi has brought out the historic 100th Constitutional Amendment Act to settle the land boundary dispute with Bangladesh. Similarly, other issues that are of concern were the river sharing agreements that we were supposed to have, because India shares as many as 54 rivers with Bangladesh. So a bilateral joint rivers commission was set up, and we have had better relationship with the river sharing aspect as well. Similarly, if you take a look at other areas, as far as economic relations are concerned, Bangladesh is India's biggest trade partner, and India's exports to Bangladesh for the financial year before COVID struck has almost been $9 billion. So this is a very huge amount. And similarly, Bangladesh has appreciated the duty-free and quota-free access given to Bangladeshi exports to India. So we can say that economic relations are very strong. Similarly, when we're talking about connectivity, both countries jointly inaugurated the Haldibari and Chilhati link, which was a railway link recently. There are many other projects in news, but this happens to be one of the historic one. That is why I'm mentioning this particular railway link. Also, in the context of connectivity, we also have to remember the BBIN initiative, that is the Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Nepal Motor Vehicle Agreement, which tried to create an MOU for a borderless access for its motor vehicles across these 4 countries. BBIN. And next, when we are talking about the benefits that we share, the cooperation in the power sector is something that we have to talk about, because currently Bangladesh is importing as much as 1160 megawatts of power from India, because this forms the basis of economic growth in Bangladesh. So considering all these facts, we can safely conclude that most of the times our relationship with Bangladesh has been very conducive and very warm. And even when we're talking about the partnerships at multilateral fora, India has recently even thanked Bangladesh for supporting India's elections in the UN Security Council's non-permanent membership. So in this way, the relations with Bangladesh are more or less very stable, even though there were certain disturbances, especially in recent times, with respect to certain issues like NRC. So this is the background of India-Bangladesh relations. Now let us look at the western front of the border, that is India and Pakistan. If you compare that with the equation that we have with Pakistan, it has gone wrong in all the possible ways because of the changing nature of diplomatic efforts, because of the political cycles in Delhi as well as Islamabad. Firstly, the equation with Pakistan has always been a matter of contention and has been subject to domestic politics. So with Pakistan, India believes that a soft power diplomatic route can actually help resolve the conflict. Recently, we have had an update with respect to our relationship with Pakistan, where the generals of both the armies met together and decided that they would not actually violate the ceasefire agreement with respect to our line of control. So this is the border with Pakistan, and border infiltration has always been the point of contention between the two countries. So this is a very positive sign. However, despite this positive feelers that were sent across from Islamabad to Delhi, the actual problem is that there is no continuity in policy. With changing governments, we have had different stance taken for domestic consumption, that is for setting the rhetoric in domestic politics. India should probably try to move away from that and try to create an image where there is a policy stability, just like we have done in the case of Bangladesh. So that is what the author is saying, to maintain that we will ensure that the strategy with respect to both the frontiers, that is Pakistan as well as Bangladesh, will help in actually solving the much larger issue of Kashmir. Because if there is some consistency in our policy with respect to different neighbors, there is a possibility that the concerns which were raised by the stakeholders will be addressed. Having said that, with respect to Bangladesh, one thing that actually favored our cause is cooperation of Bangladesh with respect to counter terrorism. Now, unless and until Pakistan also comes forward and extends its hand in dealing with this terrorism issue, which has been a huge problem for Indian territory, there is no reason why we should negotiate with a gun pointed at our head, as the author puts it in the article. So, the idea in the larger context of the politics in South Asia is that we have to attain regional stability. Unless and until this regional stability is achieved, it will hamper the collective growth of the entire region. The collective bargaining power of the Indian subcontinent is going to be very huge, because recently Bangladesh has been one of the fastest growing economies in the world. They have a huge market, huge labor force. Similarly, in the case of India, we are probably the largest market for almost every commodity out there, and FDI investments would be flowing into our country. And at the same time, Pakistan, if it partners with India and creates an atmosphere of peace and stability, it is right now placed in the grey list of FATF because of its agenda to drive the terrorists as the flag bearers of their economy. This is the accusation against Pakistan. Now, if Pakistan tries to get rid of this image and partner with the neighboring nation, that is India, together as this region grows, we will have a bigger bargaining power in almost all the issues across the world. One of the largest conflicts would be solved and things would be easy for India. That is what this article is trying to say.